The Fearless Launching Show was created to answer the question, how can I launch my big idea to the world in the most simple, straightforward way possible and reach more of the right people? I'm your host, Ann Samoylov, and I've been helping 6- and 7-figure business owners launch for over a decade. And while I love geeking out about improving launches, new launch strategies, what's working, what's not working, I'm also obsessed with exploring the heart, the mind, the challenges of running your own business. And that's what we're going to do each and every week. I want to show you how to launch that course or coaching program or other creative work and navigate the journey of being an online entrepreneur. So if you're ready for some new perspectives, some new stories around launching, well, I can't wait to share those with you. Let's get into today's episode. Hey there, let's get into today's Refocus session. So every single Monday, I release an episode that is to either inspire you, it's a shorter session, it's just a way to kick off the week and really just remind you, give you that prompt, what are you focused on this week? Do you need to be refocused on something? That maybe you tried to be focused on last week, but something happened and it knocked you off your game? Or are you just ready to focus in on something very specific this week? So you can think about that on your own. But today we're going to be talking about procrastination, which, if I might be so bold as to say, really can impact your focus if you are constantly procrastinating. But let's dive into this a little bit because procrastination comes up in so many different ways and it really can mean a lot of different things. And it's not a judgment or something that you can't get better at not doing. So here's what it looks like on the surface. Here's what it looks like on the surface actually as it relates to your business, as it relates to, let's say, business goals you're creating. The business goals you have in your mind and heart and are just like, yes, that's where I want to go. What it can often look like is you delaying big projects, you delaying starting big things, you're constantly moving things around on your calendar, pushing things back, cutting things out, maybe even smaller things in your business. And it could be something as simple as you are assigned by yourself or a team member or whoever assigns you things, some sort of task. It could be you. It could be just on a to-do list you've made for yourself to record your weekly podcast. It could be to record a video for an opt-in. It could be to create the copy or the actual page for a landing page for, let's say, your opt-in. And sometimes that opt-in or that thing you need to create has multiple steps in it. And perhaps procrastinating looks like you only have part of those steps done. Sometimes we even don't realize that I know that ADHD is a very real challenge that many of us face as entrepreneurs and just in the world in general. But sometimes having something half finished doesn't mean that. It could mean that you've just procrastinated for some other reason. If you find yourself remaking and making your list, your to-do list, moving your schedule around, retooling that, if you've done that for more than a few weeks or a few times, you're likely procrastinating. And this is just a little bit of a warning. If you have heard me say any of these things and you're like, yeah, I guess I have done that a little bit. It can be warning, but it can also be an encouragement for you to really dig in and find out what's causing the procrastination. Sometimes procrastination can look like you thinking through the strategy because as you start creating the pieces, you start thinking about them in context and not just you writing a page and like checking off a box. You're thinking, is that actually going to work? So it doesn't necessarily mean you're procrastinating it for no reason. Does this actually fit in that sequence or whatever the case might be for you? Sometimes though, and this is, I think, the harder one to deal with and to see in yourself, is that it's become a habit. And what I would say to that is if you find only you are going to know this. I can't tell you if it has become a habit or it's just the way you like to start working on things, stop, delay, ask questions, if that's the way you work. But there's some really simple ways to get out of it. And the thing that I'm going to recommend today, I think will be helpful because it puts you in action. And I think that I know a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of overthinkers. I'm an overthinker. It's easy to stop and want to make sure that what you're creating makes sense. And so we don't, but it's still procrastination. So whether you call it, I'm rethinking the strategy or not, it is overthinking, procrastination, and it is just going to lower what you are able to put out into the world and delay that potentially indefinitely, especially if you can't come to a decision on whether it makes sense, whatever it is you're creating, whatever you're halting on. And that is one way that you might be making this a habit, right? That's the way that you roll. Like I said, I can't tell you what your procrastination stems from if it has become a habit, but today I wanted to share with you something that I believe can get you out of that cycle no matter what. And it's super simple in terms of it's what I'm going to tell you to do is like a super simple step. And I know that there are people like Mel Robbins who say do something brick by brick. If it seems too difficult, break it down even further. I love all of that advice. So just know that you can look up Mel Robbins and Google Mel Robbins procrastination. She's got a lot of great advice on this. But the one thing I noticed I was doing when I procrastinate is that I make this amazing to-do list and then I proceed to remake it over and over again when I'm in a cycle of procrastinating. So I think that we got to stop doing this. It's easy to like, oh, I got to rewrite this so it's like more clear. So it makes sense. It's okay to pull important tasks forward, let's say, and add it to your to-do list, but you don't have to keep rewriting the list. And so, first of all, stop rewriting it. That's the main thing. And then what I want you to do is actually something weird, okay? I want you to pull out whatever you maybe were pulling those new things to create that new to-do list or remake that list. Look at yesterday's list. Look at last week's list. Look at last month's list and pick one thing. Just say, you know what? I'm going to do that and point your finger down on it. Doesn't have to be a reason for it. It doesn't have to be the priority. It doesn't have to be the main thing that's going to make everything else fall in line. I just want you to do the thing and just say to yourself, I'm just going to do the thing. Because I think the more that we flex that muscle of just doing the thing, that's the best way. That's the best way to continue doing the things. And I want you to, even challenging you to go further than that, really try to think about your priorities before you press the go button on that to-do list. I don't want you to you don't have to constantly revisit your priorities. And if you do, that means you didn't spend enough time in the beginning on those priorities. What's priority? What do I need to do first? So for me, the morning I first recorded the draft of this episode because I was just trying to get some ideas out. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do about this episode. And I'd been putting off restarting this podcast at that point. And in order to get moving, I just said, you know what? Record the draft of the procrastination episode. Do it now. And at the time, I was driving home from dropping off my teenager at high school. So I had to ask myself, okay, first of all, I didn't even actually ask myself in the moment. I recorded in my car on my iPhone. I put the voice memo on, I hit record, and I just started talking. I should probably let you guys hear what that sounds like, but if you do want to hear it, let me know. I had to ask myself, though, after I was through just like getting the episode out in its most rough form, why haven't I been doing this up to this point? And so taking that mini step was like, literally, it was very helpful because then I actually ended up doing it the next day and the next day. Now, these weren't the episodes. I turned on my voice. I was driving. I turned on my voice recorder. The quality of the recording was definitely not broadcast quality. But it needed to get out so that then I would have the ability to create a script. And by the time that you would hear it, like now perhaps, you might be like, oh, yeah, this sounds like a normal podcast recording. Anne's not in her car. And so now I'm at home re recording it in my home studio. And though this added an additional step, it actually didn't because I would have had to write and delay on that if I hadn't done it this way. So I've seen the detriment of delaying things like creating your marketing assets, creating the opt-in, creating or starting slash restarting your podcast, restarting your regular weekly content. Those things are important because those things let people know you're there. Those things will have impact on your business, and people need to know you're around still. Okay, if you're not continually communicating with your audience, if you're not putting things out to the world that people know you're still there, it's a pretty simple equation. If you disappear off the face of the earth for a long period of time to work on something else, like I did, you can't expect that in 1 month everyone's going to be back on board. Sure, there will be people who love you, have been following you. You have been maybe watching their random stories throughout the year, and maybe they've been watching my stories. Maybe you have. But people in that case aren't going to be ready to all of a sudden have you launch your next big thing. Not everybody's going to be ready to buy. So you owe it to yourself because I believe that you probably already have a plan. You already have something you want to achieve if you're listening today. And you're like, okay, I'm going to do this for a couple of months. And then we're going to relaunch that new piece of content there. And then maybe we'll launch in the month after that. I believe that even if you have a really simple plan, that you can get started and you can start taking those actions. And it starts simply by taking action on that one random thing. And I'm definitely someone who will repeat this over and over again. I'm actually thinking, did I say this in the first Refocus session? But that really is what it comes down to. Practice just getting stuff done. And eventually you will get more and more stuff done. After my own time away from recording this podcast, I was struggling. I was on the major struggle bus trying to figure out how was I going to get back into this if I couldn't even record like all of the episodes. So I decided to take a weird approach. I figured it out for myself, and I'm hoping that this will help you too. Look at any to-do list that you've ever created and just pick one thing that never got done and just do it. But it has to be something you can do right now. It can't involve any other people, and just do that one thing. It can be super small. And then after you've cleansed that palate a little bit, you will be ready to ask yourself the question of the week, which is, what am I going to focus on this week? Now, don't forget, I have my little refocus sessions available to you. They're free. There's only a handful every single month. But if you go to the link in the show notes, you can grab one for yourself. And I think there's some this week that are available. I think every week I've tried to put in hours that if I had them, I put them into the calendar. So go in there, grab a time. You don't just have to do it once. You can do it multiple months in a row. Heck, that's what they're there for. So I hope that works for you. And I hope that it helps you get the clarity and the focus that you need to start launching, creating, and putting your best work out to the world. All right, that's enough out of me. I will see you on Thursday.